I struggled with anxiety, depression my entire life as well. And I've always been trying to fill this void that I have. I could be around friends, around other people, and I just feel alone. Like I would numb it out with drugs and alcohol for a long time, or I would just be hyper focused on working out or just being busy. I finally felt the presence of God and spirit in my life. And I just was with my wife and I just started breaking down crying. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone.
Welcome to episode 11 of the Dr. Chris Stepien Show, where my mission is to help people who are suffering and the doctors, therapists, and healers who are committed to doing something about it. Today, I have a friend and somebody who is helping me enormously in life because he is helping my partner, Katie, enormously in life recover her health. Ryan Syverson, who is a health coach, and I will share his details on Instagram so you can contact him later today. But I'm just going to share a little bit, Ryan, first about what my partner Katie has been going through. It's really hard when your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend is struggling, especially when it's been years, and especially when doctors aren't able to seem to find a solution to their problem. We have two sons together. Bear is 6 years old, Koa is 3 years old, and relatively soon after our second son, Koa, was born, Katie started to get pretty sick. She started to get depressed. She started to gain weight. Her skin started to get very irritated. She started to seem to be losing her emotional capacity, and it was very worrisome. She also started to get pretty bad feet pain in her hands and her feet. Long story short, we saw one specialist in Georgia. She flew down to Georgia twice and came back up, and not much resulted from that. She saw a second doctor from Oregon who put her on a bunch of parasite cleanses, and then that's when she gained all of this weight from doing these parasite cleanses. And after she was done with this second doctor, Katie said to me, "Chris, I'm not seeing any other doctors or providers. It's too stressful. It's too exhausting. I don't want to do anything about it." And I don't know what happened. Ryan, I was following you for years since we both met under Xander Fryer's coaching program. And for some reason, I was seeing all of your material and content about fibromyalgia and mold and Lyme disease, and we knew Katie had mold. So I think that I had mentioned you to her, and then I mentioned her to you as well. And you're like, it's just worth a conversation. And you had a conversation with her, and she said that she liked you and she was open to potentially whatever advice you gave her and any further conversation. And I won't get into her results that she's having yet, but she is getting results and she doesn't have any pain anymore. She's getting her energy back and she feels like she's finding herself again. I've been talking long enough. Ryan, who are you and what do you do? Who do you help?
Well, thank you for having me on here, Chris. It's a pleasure. Honored to be here. I'm a health coach, certified health coach, life coach, so different certifications in like working with like psychology and different things like that. I myself is somebody also who experienced chronic illness. I back in 2010, I lost my health. I was an athlete, played Marine, did all these different things in my life, and then just my life fell apart. And was kind of one of those things, but I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia initially. Couldn't really figure out the answers. And, after seeing like 15 different doctors and, a bunch of other things, I finally discovered that I ended up having Lyme disease. I was living in a moldy home and all these different things. So it just kind of put me on a quest to recover my health because nobody could really figure my stuff out. And this was back in 2010 before people knew much about mold. Lyme had been on the scene for a while, but it was still like not like where we are at now with that. And so, I was living in Chicago. I was going to, some of the top hospitals in that area, and there's some, big ones, Northwestern, Rush, but nobody could really help me. And so I was, left to my own and figure it out. and started to, change diet, did all this different stuff and met a lot of mentors along the way. And took me like 7 years, but I got my health back and I discovered a lot of different things in the process, started helping people in different communities and things like that. So I was like, hey, I think I found my calling, and that's found my passion and calling to help people. So I got certified in functional diagnostic nutrition, and then just continued, seeking more information. Really big into quantum biology, getting into circadian rhythm stuff, and then really the big thing for me and the discovery and the transformation of my own health issues came back to my mental emotional states and nervous system regulation. And so um, I think people get so caught up in the physical aspects of health. I don't have energy, I have joint pain, uh, skin issues, whatever that may be. I'm not sleeping. And so we try to, look at it from a physical perspective. Whereas when we can start to look at, we have our energetic body or our spiritual body, our psychological body, and our physical body. If we're only focusing on the physical, we're missing out on two huge components for bringing health back. So I like to combine both, functional medicine practices or principles, quantum biology, along with mental emotional aspects, and just helping people to move through their emotions. And as they do that, I always see it's like popping a cork on a bottle of wine. They've been doing all this work and it's just like stuck and they're not going anywhere. And finally they can start to make progress. And I see that with, I would say 90% of the clients I work with, some of them have been sick for 20, 30 years, and they've done every parasite cleanse, all the detoxes, all the different supplements. And when we finally start to go deeper into like the mental emotional aspects and the nervous system components, all of a sudden they just start to make progress. And that's what I've noticed in myself as well. So
That's an awesome intro, Ryan. Okay, so you're a health coach who was suffered with mold and fibromyalgia for it sounds like about 7 years before you started getting your health back. You saw about 15 providers. It sounds like you came full circle on your hero's journey. You got your medicine and you're like, oh, now I have to give this to the world. And here we are today.
yes.
I love it. I love it. So first, why did the doctors not help Katie, and you're an effing health coach? And I say effing health coach in a really like glorious and beautiful way because I'm so happy Katie's doing better, and I see your testimonials on your Instagram profile. What are the doctors missing, and why? Why?
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I think, well, the biggest thing is like trust between a practitioner and their client is huge. Two, listening and holding a space for them versus just rushing them through like a quick, I'm not sure what Katie, like what kind of intakes and stuff that she did with these other practitioners. But holding space for them is a really big aspect. I find listening to their story, being empathetic. I find that a lot of people resonate with me because I walked their shoes and walked in their shoes. And I think that a lot of doctors, I mean, they're always, I think that they're out to do the best that they can. But sometimes they don't have that like the different things to maybe be relatable.
Right.
And with functional medicine, it's kind of gone from, we have allopathic medicine, let's just give somebody a pill to suppress a symptom. And I find that functional medicine has kind of been doing similar with we call it green pharma. Let's just throw a ton of supplements at somebody. And while I definitely use supplements and I find them benefits, but I see people coming to me with, and I was this person too, where you're taking 20, 30 different supplements and it's hard on the body. And again, we're focusing on that physical aspect, and like let's pull things back. If we can help you support and move through any kind of emotional things and like support your nervous system, then your body starts to function better. Your organs communicate better. Your inflammation starts to come down, and that takes time with clients. Working with them in session. Whereas a doctor, you see them once every some of these doctors you see maybe once every 6 months. They give you a supplement protocol, and there's no guidance, there's no support other than maybe some email stuff. And I think
Right.
clients need more than that. They need feedback. They need to work through specific things. They need that space. And really integrating with that emotional component, which most doctors don't have that kind of background.
Right. Yeah, amazing and brilliant because I see that as a very large ingredient to why you're effective, successful. I know one of the first things you had Katie do was to purchase the book A Course in Miracles, and I am currently about 60 days into that book, which is fascinating to me. And Katie has also mentioned, besides doing the book and the spiritual work, that having you as a really good listener and empathizer and person who connects, as somebody who is very emotionally sensitive, it's probably the most vital ingredient to why she's getting better. Do you find this with most of the fibromyalgia and mold patients?
I do. I find that quite a bit. Yeah, like it's because when you're emotionally sensitive, you feel maybe you haven't been listened to or you haven't been heard, and your nervous system's dysregulated. The way I like to explain it to clients is that when we're in a well-regulated nervous system, they call it the window of tolerance. I think it's from Dan Siegel's terminology from it, but you can imagine you have like a football field wide of regulation, and inside that football field, you can get stressed and you go to the sideline, you come back, but you stay within that window of regulation. But if you go on the sideline one way, you're in a fight or flight. If you go down the other way, you're in like a freeze shutdown. But as life starts to throw things at us, and it's usually never one thing, but there's one thing that's like the straw that broke the camel's back. It could be a fight, it could be a car accident, it could be a breakup, financial lost job that just collapses, and now your football field is shrunk to a hallway, and any type of thing can set you off, and you get stuck, and you can't can come back to that regulation. People bounce between fight, flight, and freeze, and so when people can start creating capacity, which helps, let's like open space for emotions to come out. Emotions are energy and motion. We repress them and suppress them. We build up, we start to shrink our capacity. And so we can open it up a little bit. Now we can start to widen our football or widen our window of tolerance, and now people can handle things easier. They can, their body's not so reactive to foods or to supplements. They can handle day to day interactions in life with more ease without feeling so overwhelmed. And then the body can start to come back into like a more of a homeostasis, and organs start to function, digestion improves, inflammation comes down. And so that's like a huge component that a lot of people don't realize. And, there's like a huge trend now with nervous system regulation, and rightfully so. But a lot of times people are looking for like a quick fix, like a physiological sigh or doing some specific things like that, which can be awesome in the moment. But if we're not looking at what is dysregulated in the nervous system to begin with, which is repressed emotions or unresolved traumas or things like that, we're missing like the big pieces. And so those are more band-aids, like to get to the deeper stuff. We want to start to work through those things. And through like my life coaching certifications, through like Whole Wellness Academy, which is, or a whole wellness method, like my mentor, Lita Sportel, she's basically taken the Course in Miracles with Joe Dispenza and other forms like Peter Levine and a lot of other practitioners, and put it into a framework that I can help people work through, that's very simple for them to work through. How do we deal with negative thoughts, emotions, our somatic stuff, which then really starts to open things up for them where they've been stuck in their healing journey.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful. Why that all makes sense with the emotional pieces and the story and how you're working people get to those deeper layers. But I also want to ask you about, because the functional medicine stuff and some of like the toxicities and the homeo, what are you doing differently from this? How you tested Katie and the supplements that she's taking that the prior two doctors didn't do. So I got the emotional piece. What about the functional medicine pieces?
Sure, sure. So the other big piece I'm really big on, and the more I dive into it, the more it's fascinating, is balancing minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So minerals are the spark plugs of life, and through HTMA, that's a hair tissue mineral analysis test. We can see a lot of different things with that test. We can see where, like, how is our what are we predominantly like our autonomic nervous system state? Are we going to be more sympathetic or are we more in a parasympathetic state? I would say 95 to 96% of my clients are in a more parasympathetic state. And we think of parasympathetic as good, but I think of more like they're in more of like a shutdown state. And so we need to bring energy back into the nervous system. A lot of them have slow thyroid. Their adrenals are like the nutrients for the adrenals are pretty low. Some of them will have copper issues. So with copper and zinc, they play a big role in the immune system. And then we look at the ratios between these things, and it's pretty uncanny. Like where, I mean, if you get into the work of Rick Malter, he's a therapist who uses HTMA in his practice, and he's found like correlations between specific mineral patterns that can tell you if somebody's got unresolved trauma, different types of things just based on mineral patterns, where you can help somebody that they may not see those things. And when we bring minerals back into balance, that allows the cells to start making more energy. It opens up the drainage pathways, organs start to work better, everything works better. And, and then when you combine it into like a powder or pill form for Katie, things just start to shift. I see it all the time. Like I have a client she's been sick for like 40 years, um, severely depleted in minerals. She's been to some of the top functional medicine practitioners in the country, and once we started to balance her minerals, like sensitivities went down, her energy got better, she was sleeping better. I find that to be a very, very supportive. I like to use homeopathics as well as a gentle way to open up drainage pathways. Because a lot of my clients that I work with are very sensitive, right, and so they can't handle things. Whereas people throw these like stronger like parasite cleanses and stuff at people without, right, baby stepping into it, it can be too much for somebody, and then they end up going backwards, or they just stop completely because it's kind of overwhelming for them.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were talking about. Katie, the parasite cleanse is what caused her to start gaining all this weight, and she's like, "What the heck is going on?" And the doctor didn't have anything to say about what was going on or what she should do now. And then she was so happy that you had talked to her about like what was actually happening, that her lymphatic passages weren't opening. So I love that you mentioned that. Katie was mentioning about the hair and mineral analysis, and you were talking to her about that people with depression typically have mineral issues, and I've had periods of depression all my life, and she said that I was going to have to grow my hair out, which I haven't had the courage to do since my hair started receding 15 years ago. How long does your hair have to be to get the minerals tested?
Well, you don't have to. I mean, you can do from axillary, you can do armpit hair, pubic hair. It's just not as accurate as your hair from your scalp. The other thing you can do for like if you shave your head, like you can just save like the shavings like over the course of like 3 months. And then you can just use that because it's a mixture, because basically you're using an inch and a half of hair, which gives us it gives us like a time frame of like 3 months. And so we can see like patterns start to shift in that way. If we use like pubic hair, usually you see individual minerals will be much more elevated on the HTMA, but we can still look at the ratios, which are even more important than just like the single minerals, to support them. So I've worked with other men who shave their head, and we use pubic hair as well. I've done it on myself when my head was shaved. So that's another option as well.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, so you did the functional medicine approach. We did the emotional piece. What other parts with Katie or other people do you find are important to helping them heal from the things that you specialize in? Mold, fibromyalgia. Like what are the, do you feel like you're a really good person to see for these conditions? Fibromyalgia, mold, Katie's struggling with psoriatic arthritis, which you're helping her with.
Yep, autoimmune disease, any of those types of things would be is kind of right up my alley. I mean, in my perspective, I feel like they're all autoimmune issues on some sort of spectrum. Like even like autoimmunity tends to have a lot of like infection-based things as a trigger, as like the environmental thing, toxicities. And yeah, just anybody that's kind of dealing with complex issues that they haven't been able to deal with. I mean, mast cell issue is a big something a lot of people have now. Just, we're just in a more sensitive society. But it, like, outside of like the functional medicine aspect and like the emotional component, definitely the spiritual component is huge, like Course of Miracles. I think it's something that we all need, and it doesn't have to be God or whatever. It can be universe, like your higher self, the collective consciousness, whatever it is for somebody to have that connection beyond yourself, because it all comes back to oneness. We're all one. You and I are like, you're a reflection of myself. If I judge you, I'm judging myself. If I'm projecting onto you, I'm expecting to be attacked back. So I have this guilt that I carry around from a Course of Miracles perspective. And if we can realize that we're all one and we can love our brothers and sisters as one, this creates this miracle between the between us. And it's not we can't we don't want to change the world. We want to change the way we're looking at the world. And then that's like when we start to have these changes. And Course in Miracles talks about this light that we're connected to God, source, spirit. But then when we look into like get into like some of the quantum biology and things like that, we see that our mitochondria produce light. They produce infrared light to expand our easy water. Um, Looking at live cells, and you can shine light through them, and a prism of light comes out the other side, whereas a dead cell doesn't. Like there, and we have quantum entanglement. Like there's proof that we are all one, and when we can realize that I mean, that's really the crux of it. If we can all do that and come back to who we truly are, is just pure love and pure light. That's coming back to who we truly are makes a big difference. And that can look different ways for different people. But again, like for me, I felt like I've always been spiritual to some aspect, but I didn't really understand that oneness. And Course of Miracles is what really talked to me and spoke to me and helped me start to realize things. And I talk about this on many podcasts too. Like I've struggled with anxiety, depression my entire life as well. And I've always been trying to fill this void that I have. I could be around friends, around other people, and I just feel alone. Like I would numb it out with drugs and alcohol for a long time, or I would just be hyper focused on working out or just being busy. And one day, like after I started getting into Course in Miracles, doing my life coaching stuff and getting into that and working with my mentor, I finally had this what the Course in Miracles we call a holy instance. Like I finally felt the presence of God and spirit in my life. And I just was with my wife and I just started breaking down crying. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone.
Mm.
And that was like just blew me away. And now I know whenever things get bad for me, like I stop and think, I just have to trust, because opposite of trust is anxiety.
Mhm.
And I've had many times where things like I'm like I don't know if I can keep my business going. I don't know if what's going on. Like how am I going to pay my bills? And then all of a sudden I just have this like warmth and rush come over me. Like I'm not alone. I trust that things are going to happen for me. And next, things start to change. And whenever I surrender and just let go of control, and we too many of us, and this is big in the chronic illness community too, we get so hyper focused on the outcome. If it doesn't come fast enough, it really just crushes people. And Dr. Joe talks about
Yeah.
who are the ego's three best friends: time, body, and environment. If we hyper focus on our body, like our symptoms and the way we look, or if we constantly focusing on time, like this isn't happening fast enough, I don't have time, or we're worrying about the environment, that's not only that moves us into a like a fight flight state, and our body doesn't heal there. And when we can let go of those things, it can make a massive difference for us.
I love that. I was gonna, as you were talking about Dr. Joe, I was thinking about, he also mentions Dr. Joe Dispenza, by the way, everybody. He talks about, he's talking less about people pursuing healing nowadays and more about becoming whole, with the idea of reconnecting with your source, your God, your spirit, your power. I know for me, especially when I was religious from my parents when I was in adolescence and high school, I remember when I was like, F this God is not there. No one's home. I'm not doing these prayers anymore. and I just felt alone for the next 20 years. And if it wasn't for honestly all of the psychedelics I used to use, or and still use too, but I use a lot more for the past 5 to 10 years or so, that's given me the connection that it sounds like you've found too by having that holy instance. And I was thinking too, I didn't realize how much you are you talk about the quantum biology, and you're wearing the blue light glasses right now. But I remember I read this book called Original Thinking that was a conversation or a dialogue between quantum physicists and First Nation elders. And with the idea being that quantum physics and First Nation animism, the same thing that Native Americans believe and agree on, is that we are all one and that consciousness resides in everyone and everything, just like quantum physicists say it is. So I love that you bring spirituality into healing, and it sounds like it's actually truly holistic healing and not just words coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, holistic has to go into, again, like, yeah, talk about like our spiritual body, our psychological body, and our physical body. If we're missing the psychological and the spiritual, the body, and I always the body is not going to heal completely. And I feel that that's like the first aspect is we lose it from the spiritual aspect, and then on an energetic perspective, that starts to mess with our meridians and like how communication is because all healing is quantum healing. Our cells communicate quantumly. And you're a fascia expert, just the fascination of like fascia and what all that, and it's like the quantum superhighway is what a lot of the quantum biologists will call, or those people in that field now. I've seen that too for like some of the fibromyalgia people I've worked with. They've done all these other things, but they never really dug into the light environment. So, I mean, we're not living in a natural world anymore. We're indoors 90% plus more of the day. We're surrounded by blue light, which is toxic, and it's just more and more. I mean, there's so many studies coming out now with that, and simply just going back to nature, getting outside, grounding yourself, seeing the sunrise. I mean, that our whole everything is based off of light for timing, and we have clock genes in front of every cell, and people don't get that. And the people that I've worked with that do like actually be consistent with it. I've had some fibromyalgia people that have been sick for 20, 30 years, and they've done a lot of different things on this. They started doing this, and all of a sudden their health starts to see major improvements in like 30 days. So, and it's free. It's it's except for if you're going to get some blue blockers, which I do recommend for some people, or for everybody actually. But
I wish I had mine here. Now that I'm okay, I got it. I got it. I'll bring them in tomorrow. What about my buddy Dr. Sean texted me yesterday? What about grounding sheets? Do you recommend those?
yeah, grounding sheets. I do for some people. It depends upon like if you're living in an apartment or something, it can be difficult. But if you have a home, and you know like what your actual, if it's got like an earth ground or is it grounded to like a water pipe, you definitely want to make sure it's not like a dirty like electrical connection. There's some I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's a company that they they have like I think it's shielded, so it can help with like if there's any kind of like dirty ground. But yeah, grounding sheets can definitely help for some people. Grounding mats. Like we just moved to the Boston area, so we're living. We were in a on the third floor of our apartment. So I don't have any grounding things here, but I go out like multiple times during the day and just in the courtyard and the grass and get down on the bare feet and do some like calisthenics and stuff like that. But or you can get grounding shoes that can be really helpful as well.
People who are struggling with issues. What kind of people who have those health concerns you talked about prior to this that do not do well with your coaching? I imagine somebody who isn't willing to open up the religious or spiritual belief can. Like if they're just completely atheist, they're probably not a good fit for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you definitely have to be open to that, the mental, emotional aspect of looking into it. But I feel most people that come to me are at a point that like they're ready to do anything, and it's they're intuitively they're asking themselves, they're like, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And when you start to ask those questions, you start to ask the right questions, things start to present themselves. And I feel people come to me because they're ready, and um, people are meant to come to me that are ready for this particular journey. I definitely believe that, like the energetics and like Course in Miracles talks about that as well. Like people that, if I'm not ready, like people are waiting for me to come out and going through like Xander's coaching and all the different like, business stuff. Like if I'm not putting myself out there, those people that are waiting to work with me are not going to help me. And when I think about that, that's what really kind of helps support me. And I have to be in a good energetic space to attract the right people. But somebody that just wants a quick fix, like a supplement protocol or like a parasite cleanse or whatever. Um, Sorry to tell you, there's no such thing as a quick fix. And if you've been doing this a long time, supplements probably aren't your thing. You might need some of it, but you need to go deeper and look at what's really blocking your body from recovering and doing what it was meant to do or designed to do.
I love it. I love it. So I imagine if people, they're desperate, they really want help, they feel like there's a better way, they're willing to put the time and the energy in with you long term, you probably have a pretty good batting average for if you take on 10 clients. Are you 10 for 10 in taking on those 10 clients over a long period of time?
I do pretty well. I mean, there's some clients that I've had that have been with me for a while that haven't got to the results that I really would like to see. But some people take longer than others. But generally, the people that do like put in the work and they're consistent about it and they do it, they get better. The ones that don't tend not to, get the results that they're looking to get.
It's helpful. It's always helpful for people. I try to tell our patients or potential patients on social media, if we take on a patient, there's like an 80% success rate, and at least 60% of those are going to have some good level of relief. So, with this chronic illness stuff, and to the extent, and I think people can really appreciate your having been there and your honest approach. Because sometimes there are doctors or coaches out there that are saying, you got this problem, I'm going to fix you no matter what. And I don't think that's really doing a good service to people with that condition, because if you overpromise and underdeliver, then you're going to lose people's trust. And then it's like trauma. It's trauma to those people. So I appreciate the way that you talked about that.
Yeah, people need to be like some people say they're ready to recover and heal, but they're not. And then even too, like in the healing process, like somebody that may be on disability, they haven't been able to work for many years or a decade or whatever, when they start to get better, sometimes they will self-sabotage because then that has been their identity for 10, 20 years. And now I'm like, what am I going to do? I have to go get a job. Like, I feel like that can be scary. And like the identity aspect, that's the other thing too, with like labels and people just like dying or not dying, but they just lock onto that label. And I mean, like your subconscious mind is gonna, if you say like, when people call themselves limeys or moldies or things like that, like
Right.
you're identifying that, and people get really upset when I say that. But if you want to identify it, you're fighting yourself. So you just got to let that go.
Yeah, I will often say that we don't help victims at Barefoot Rehab, and then people get very upset and angry at me. So I hear you.
And the victim thing is definitely. I mean, we all play the victim, and and throughout our lives in different different seasons. But yeah, if you're that would be somebody too. If it's coming as a victim and looking. The other thing too is like I'm just a guide. I'm just here to provide you the path and guide you. I'm not, you know, everybody's their own best healers. So
Practically speaking, what type of advice do you have for anybody who has mold, autoimmune condition, fibromyalgia, mast cell activation syndrome? If you were going to die tomorrow, what would you say as your last words right now to help those individuals?
first, number one is you got to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, that's going to be a big issue. You need to work through your emotional stuff because that's, really playing a major role in everything that you do. It's driving your behaviors and your beliefs and actions. I mean, obviously, we can't rule out the basics like diet. The more and more I get into the quantum biology and the circadian rhythm, circadian biology stuff, it's just it's just simple. It makes sense. Let's go back to living how we're meant to live. I mean, I know in our life, with technology and things like that, it can be difficult, but just make time for it. Health is important. That's the number one thing. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And people are looking for quick fixes around different things. And I did it for years. And there's no such thing. And the other thing too is that uh, people are so quick because we're an instant gratification society. And so if somebody doesn't see, and this is a big thing I see often too, and I was there myself, is that they go and if they don't see results in a month, they're on to the next thing, and then they're on to the next thing. Or I have people that come to me and I'm working with like, hey, I just, I read about this and now I'm doing all these supplements and I'm doing this. And I'm like, like there's got to be that trust factor, and the trust is in the person you're working with, but also trusting yourself. And I think those are some big things. So start with love. Love yourself and your neighbor as much as possible, and then from there, take care of your diet. Be responsible for yourself because you are your own healer. And get outside, get some sun, and just find joy again, man. Because if you're just so caught up in this healing thing, like I got to do this, I got to do that, and you're not living your life, like it's just have some fun, man.
All work and all healing and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. What is, I want you to spell out your Instagram profile so people can find you. And you also do free consults and phone calls for people who might be curious, just talk to you to see if you can potentially help.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Ryan _Syverson. So that's RYAN _SYVERSON. That would be where I'm most active. I'm on Facebook too, but I'm not very active there. So best place to find me is on Instagram.
And you do free consults or phone calls for people who need help.
Yep, yep, yep. Just you can book on my through my link in my Instagram page. Just reach out, book a call. We'll have a conversation and see if this might be something I can help you with. And then we would, if I feel like that it could be, then we could book a second call to kind of go dive deeper into you know where they're at, what they're doing, and and if I'm not able to help, I got a great network of people that I can send somebody to as well.
I love it. And because I know that with both Katie and S, who I referred to you, that initial phone call, they were both wishy washy. And after that phone call, they're like, I like him and I want to continue. So if you're somebody struggling with those conditions and you really need help, you can just talk to Ryan for free without any investment and just see if you like him and what your heart says and then follow it that way. So I appreciate you doing that for people. Ryan, I love what you've done for me and my sons and Katie. And so it was important to me to speak to you because you're somebody who seems to have your heart behind your words. And I hope that anybody who's struggling with these conditions does reach out to you. I appreciate the journey you've been on, the suffering you've gone through, and the work that you're now doing. And I appreciate you being on our side to help people heal because this chronic illness thing is devastating to people. And I'm glad people like you and I are doing something about it.
Great. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And again, it's been an honor to be here and to be able to help Katie. And I really appreciate everything. I really do. I appreciate it. Thank you.